Well, welcome back, everybody. This is episode number 43 of the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. And we've got Ryan and Scotty with us as usual, and there are some new faces here as well. And the reason for that is we've been wanting to have a discussion about time attack. And then I think it was around Pikes Peak this year when it came out that Kiet, you came out to Pikes Peak to help with Brett Dickey's the S2000 that he was running. And Dussex was like, well, we should reach out to Kiet and see if he'd come on and talk about time attack. And then it was like, well, if we're going to talk to Kiet, maybe we should see if we could get Jason on. And then so we're like, well, let's reach out to Jason. And then we're like, man, if we're really going to talk about time attack and we're going to get Kiet and Jason on, why not just see what Ian's doing? Ian Baker here. So all three of these people have joined us here to have a conversation about everything that is time attack. So it's Jason Dienhart, Kiet Lee of Super Lap Battle and Global Time Attack, and then Ian Baker from World Time Attack in Australia. So Ian has made the longest journey to come join us here, all the way from Australia and tomorrow, or from the future, to join us on the podcast.
We're tomorrow over here at the moment.
Yes. So thank you guys again for making the time and making this all work. And I guess so, Ian, maybe let's start with you because your event is the most it's one event per year, but can you explain just a little bit about what World Time Attack is?
Yeah. Okay. Basically, it started. We started as a little. Well, I'll go right back to the beginning. We took a car to Japan in 2007, Nissan GTR, and we went and it was sort of the guy's dream to go and race over there, and we sort of helped him do that. And when we're back in 2000, it was 2006. That's 2007, sorry.
Yeah.
And back then in Japan, the whole pro class style car, which is what we call open class now, it's all got advanced from that. But like the cars like the Cyber Evo, the HKS 230R, the M Speed GTR, all those sort of cars were that was the peak of that period in Japan. So, and I'd been going back and forth there quite a bit with my business and seeing those cars over there, I was like, man, this is so cool. Like, we need to bring this back to Australia, this concept. So, and back then, I think there was a guy running little time attack events in Queensland, but there was no national style thing. So I come back here with no idea how to run even a track day and just decided to do it basically.
Wow.
And then we went and spoke with Yokohama Tire, who became our partner. A guy named Christian Hansen back then, who actually all the guys from that day one, they still all work for me every year at the event.
Oh, wow.
He's got nothing to do with Yokohama anymore, but he manages our stage now, So it's sort of they're all car enthusiasts. So we went to Oran Park then, and I went and seen Jeff Boulos, which is a now defunct track. It's all a housing estate now, like a lot of them. And I went and seen a guy named Jeff Boulos who I said, we want to run a time attack event again. So do we, and I'm like, right. So we sort of got together and back then, drifting was quite taking off in Australia. It was sort of, that was the big new deal, and
Sure.
time attack was sort of like a bit underground. So we got together. So I'll just add that Jeff is still our race director to this day. And every year has been up in the control tower since 2008. So we did that event in 2008 and 2009, and then the track closed. And so the only other track, there was only two other tracks in New South Wales, which is our state. And one was a track called Wakefield Park, which is a sort of a region. It's a little bit like a Button Willowy type thing. It's a smaller track, but it was traditionally the one that magazines used for if they do a comparison. But I thought to accommodate crowds and everything, there's no stands there and there was no anything. It was all sort of that's not going to work. So we needed to go to Sydney Motorsport Park, but it was like twice the price. So the only way that I could do that was to try and work out how to get a lot more revenue in, And so I went and seen Christian at Yokohama. I said, you know what, man, we're going to bring some cars from overseas. This is where it's going to be at. And and we went through a whole lot of stuff. And I said, I'm going to need a lot more support from you guys. And you got to remember, we're only getting, it was big comparatively to what had happened before, but it was still only very amateur level when we were at Oran Park, And so I said, we've got to go and find some cars. And I used my contacts in Japan and said, can we get some cars over from there? And we'll go to America. And he kept saying, we can't do that. My boss will never let me do that. And so I went and seen his boss and talked him into letting Christian come with me to Japan and America. So we went and drove around Japan with a 1-page document, trying to bring people to an event that didn't even exist.
Like the pro level cars from Japan.
Well, that's what we're trying to get. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're driving around saying, come to World Time Attack. And that. No, you got to understand, that the Japanese are very reserved. And what's over there? Like, all the fastest cars are here, and they were back then, there's no question about that. So we drove around, and I'm saying, look, Christian, I'm going to need $100,000, He's going, there's no way I can do that, By the time I'm doing the maths on everything, he said, no, I can't do it, But we just keep working on it. And I eventually got Panspeed committed to come, the first one. But they said, we're a Dunlop team, not a Yokohama team. It doesn't matter. That's fine, And then these guys all use Super GT drivers to drive the cars. And so, it was all starting to happen. Then we got Tomei to commit to bringing the WRX. And then we flew to America. And we went to SEMA show, and we cruised around there and had a look at everything. Then we went to Button Willow. And I think the week after Button Willow, there may have been, did there used to be a red line event or something at Fontana as well? Maybe a week later, a week before. But we went to those events, and we sort of, I sort of picked 2 cars, which was obviously Sierra, which would sort of, and then FX Motorsport was the other one that we wanted to get, and both of them sort of committed to come at the time, and I remember because I said to Dennis Cockey, was a pretty wealthy dude that owned Sierra, and I said, I had the 1-page document now in English saying, you're going to come to Australia, and we're going to do a world event, and he said, who else is coming, and I said, oh well, and by that time I think Cyber Evo were interested, so I said, yeah, we've probably got them, and I said, I'll tell you what, if you win today, I'm going to ship your car to Australia. And he turned around and looked at me and said, I'll hold you to that. Oh. And I went, wow, okay. So they won, and then he come looking for me and he said, oh, there you are. He said, where are we going to? Austria. So that's how we started all that stuff. And by then, awesome. I didn't think it was all sort of very sketchy, and we didn't have any contracts or anything. It was all just handshake deals.
Yeah.
And anyway, by the time we're coming back, we're sort of putting it together, and Christian saying, I can't do that money. And we did a deal, and that we did an income split with him in the first year to try and get the whole thing running, and just made it work. And I remember when we shipped all the cars and we were unpacking them all, and Dennis turned up. He was the first guy to turn up, and he said, open the container. And I opened the container, and he said, open the other one. I opened it up, and I thought he was looking for his card. He was looking for Cyber Evo, and he goes, that's the one. That's the one we want to be. You did it. Good on you. I don't think he believed it was going to happen. Like it was sort of like, I said, no, I told you we're going to do it. And he goes, no, I held you to your word. No, I respect you. Thank you.
That's amazing.
That's how we kicked it all off.
Now, and so Ian, you were inspired by the time attack that was going on in Japan, right? Is that kind of the starting point? Now, Kit and Jason, is that kind of a common inspiration for you guys as well, to get everything rolling, or?
Somewhat. I mean, if I go way back, to like the 90s, before I discovered Time Attack, I was into import drag racing and just JDM type cars in general. So of course, looking to like old options magazines, new ones at that time, and any type of video that you can get your hands on. I was really into the circuit type cars and the look, but I was into, car bowling. I was into going straight, and that was like my big thing back then. It wasn't until I was working for the media, working at Super Street Magazine in the early 2000s, and I've got to give it up to John the Dairy. He was the one that really wanted to do Time Attack here in the States under like an editorial event that would happen just once a year, invite something just to produce content with. And he's the one that said, hey, let's work on this thing together. I happen to do the events and for the magazine. And him and I sat down, figured out a way to basically look how, people were doing it in other parts of the world, and just tried to emulate it, really. And that was really my introduction. I was kind of like introduced to it, from the dairy, from a friend of mine, is how I got started into it, and started to fall in love with the similarities that I find with drag racing, the stress, that everybody feels, the anticipation, the put up or shut up, short amount of time span that you have to do something that you spent maybe years or months leading up to do, and it's all over so quick. So there's a lot of similarities to where I get the same, kind of like, get the same out of it, you know what I mean, than I did with the drag racing, in terms of like the entertainment value, the stress value, the ups and the downs. I like the team aspect, in a drag race team, very similar. You got someone on the tires, you got someone that maybe tunes the car, got all these separate people that work on the car and the driver. And it's not just about the driver. The more you know about the sport, the more it's about everybody else. So it's, my love for it really comes from kind of like something else. And then over all these years, that was back in 2003 and 4 and 2005. I kind of got out of it for a couple of years. And then it was actually Christian Rado, which most of us all know, at different points here in the last like 25 years or so. He was very deeply involved with Redline, and going around the country with them. They were having financial troubles and they were going to go bankrupt. He knew that was happening. So he actually put the money together for me to start Global Time Attack. Wow. And he's still my partner on that, like to this day, with the GTA stuff. And again, it was like someone else kind of pulling me back into it. And then me being reintroduced at that time, which was like 2010, 2011. And I fell in love with it again, like really quick. And that's kind of just where we've gone from here, until I ended up meeting Kiet shortly after that, because he was a competitor already for years before in Redline and anything else that was like happening locally out here in Southern California. And, we became friends, and he had, big ideas and big dreams to do something big once a year and kind of emulate, like what Ian does, where he's got this big mega event that happens once a year that everybody plans for. And that's what Kiet wanted to do. And that's kind of how the Super Lap Battle thing happened at COTA like a few years back. It was kind of,
wow,
to segue into that. Yeah.
So, and I guess just to kind of to frame it for people that maybe are not that familiar with Time Attack, it kind of what you're saying, Jason, with the comparison with drag racing. Time Attack ultimately is for time. It's a lap for time, and you're trying to be in whatever class the car is in, to be the fastest lap in that class for the day.
Right.
And so whatever track you're in, you want to be the fastest in your class. And then how much of a part would you guys say that the overall record for a class or for the track is also folded into a part of what Time Attack is all about?
It's big for us because that's what everybody's chasing, and something might stand for a year, a couple of years. There were some records in Buttonwillow that stood for like 5-6 years. So yeah, I mean, that's what everybody should be chasing,
Certainly in Australia, that's the case too. The official lap record at Sydney Motorsport Park is, I think, 119.1 or something, and it's held by an A1 GP car with Nico Hulkenberg driving. And our fastest pro car is only like 1/10 slower at the moment.
Yeah,
so
that's super wild.
That's nuts. So just
the biggest problem we've got though is to get the unofficial lap record is probably pretty highly unlikely, because that's Daniel Ricciardo in an F1 car, and that's
right.
111 to give you a comparison. So we're only 8 seconds behind an F1 car, and we're on road tyres still. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
that's completely nuts. But that's to a certain extent, that is what Time Attack is all about. So it's to be the fastest. Ultimately, it's to be the fastest.
Yeah.
And
100%.
The other question I had kind of related to that is, Time Attack is also unique in that it's the kind of sport where you have some really big teams in the unlimited class, but you have some small teams that are also in the really big class, and it's something where you could have a guy that is inspired by Time Attack, that decides to go to his garage and like he's looking at his car, and as Scotty would say, you just start drink a beer and looking at the car and trying to think, what can I do to make it faster? What can I put on? What can I take off to make the car faster? And come up with something. And Time Attack is usually an opportunity, as long as the car is properly built and safe and such, that you still have that opportunity to kind of come up with something and try it and test it in this forge that is Time Attack, to see if you can come up with a solution or a car that can actually be competitive in a class, or even just go for an overall record. And that's pretty rare these days. I mean, do you think that is some of the lure of what helps or what gets people excited about Time Attack as well?
I think on a competitor standpoint, it's even the little guy can go fast, right? Like, as long as you have a budget that's within reason, the right people on the team, you can go fast. And I'm just a regular guy. Like, I'm just a regular guy that owns a car shop that builds cars. And I look at these guys in the unlimited class, like the guys that compete at Ian Baker's event at World Time Attack, and I'm like, wow. I think JD and I went over that in 2018. I'm like, JD, you got to take a look at these cars, man. Like, they're no joke. Yeah. They're no joke, right?
Yeah, a whole nother level.
A whole nother level. And one of the things in America before we went to World Time Attack was I was kind of worried that the car caliber here, the builds weren't up to par, and we're way far from the Australian engineering, the Japanese engineering, and I think that we needed it to go over there to kind of bridge that gap, because a lot of the things that we've implemented here with the cars here are things that we've learned in Australia. And I think that because the guys in Australia, the teams in Australia, they're so serious about going fast and setting records that they spend a lot of effort in engineering their cars. Whereas the guys here, for a long time, they would just show up with the same car and think they would go faster. And it wasn't working out that way. And I was really worried about Time Attack in America, because it was just the same lap times, the same cars, not really going faster. But just in the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen the times drop dramatically, and guys are coming out with re-engineered cars and going faster and faster and faster. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I really love to see. I'm sure it's the same for these guys here. Like, that's what we all want to see, go faster,
Yeah.
I think part of that as well is the type of people that get involved in it. Like, we're sort of on an island out here, miles away from anyone. And there's a lot of, how would I say it, not retired, but ex-Formula One, ex-IndyCar, ex-NHRA, ex-NASCAR, guys that have gone over and lived the dream, and they come back to Australia, and outside of V8 supercar, there's not a whole lot they can do. Like, over in America, there's probably a lot of choices. They can go to IMSA, or they can go to this or that. In Australia, it's not really there. So they come back here, and once they see that we've got a pretty open rule book, man, this is my opportunity, So right. Barry Locke is ex-McLaren. Sammy Diasonis is ex-Toyota F1. And these guys they're the guys that are engineering the pro cars. So if you need to look why they are where they are, that's why. It's the people involved in it, that and then of course it drags the whole thing up from that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we've been very careful to not alienate anyone. That right at the tuner level, like club sprint level class, what Brett Dickey races in, we've sort of made sure that you can't go too crazy with that. You can't make the car too light. You can't have too big an aero, so that we keep that level of the sport where it is. And they still feel like they've got a big place in what we do, and they do, whereas, but what's happening now, even these XF1 guys are getting involved in those cars. Because they're, obviously got the credentials, but we've made it in a box, like you can only take, I think 5% out of the weight of that car. So you can't make it a lightweight, thing, and you can only make the wing that big and so on. So we try to keep it so that there's something for everyone.
I can see the open rule book. I mean, that is such an appeal of what Time Attack is, but is that for you guys, is that challenging to come up with the rule set, because you kind of have to have a ladder where you can have unlimited, which is the most open at the top, but you've got to have like a couple steps underneath. So it's not intimidating them. It doesn't, you don't think you have to have $1 million car to be able to come out and participate. There's tiers.
That's
Is that a big
100%
challenge?
right. And we've got to be very careful of that. Like, you know, even in the club sprint class, if you gave everyone, these guys, there's companies in Australia making billet engine blocks and sequential transmissions and all that sort of stuff. Now, you close your eyes for a minute and they'll all be in there. So we've had to be, and you get pressure from the wealthier teams going, why don't you let this in there? We've had to be very careful that we keep a lid on all that stuff, because it has progressed it. But some of the stuff in the terms of reliability, like, you know, we let dog engagement gearboxes into club sprint class simply because we're having too many failures with the other stuff, you know. So, but you can't run a sequential trans. So we kept it, you know, we're trying. There's some parts where you go, there's too much reliability issues here and these cars aren't finishing. And other things where you go, no, that's too much money. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, and it's a very similar situation that we deal with. That, I mean, he basically said it for me. You know, I mean, it's the same thing that we deal with over here. We want to make sure that we protect, you know, the integrity of those level of builds where they don't get out of control. You know, what we will call the lower classes. You know, not what we call unlimited. You know, and when we've got a street class and then a limited class, and same thing. You know, we've got to protect that so it doesn't get out of control in terms of costs and makes it hard for anybody to compete.
And you'll have competitors pulling each way. Like some of them going, no, I can't afford that. The guys at the top want to go to the next level. So we just say, well, if you want to do that, you need to go up a class. You know, and they go, well, I can't compete at that class. They're too far gone. You say, well, you're doing the same thing to that class. So we listen to the competitors all the time, but we're not directed by them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Because they're still customers in a way, right? But they also still bring out the spectators and stuff too. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really
you won't catch any three of us though going into the pits and telling them how to build a car.
Sure, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. Kit's probably got some opinions. But yeah, I mean, one of the things I think when you talk about time attack and you have the pointy end of the scale and stuff like that, when you get down to like the club sprint class or the enthusiast or the street and stuff, one of the things that time attack, at least locally, has been doing such a good job with, and it's one of the things that World Time Attack does a good job with, and it's definitely something that I really appreciate with Global Time Attack and Super Lap Battle, is like everybody who's driving in the event has a face, has a name, has a build, gets some kind of exposure, get some kind of coverage. You're like open up this book and there's a driver and enthusiast, or there's a driver in club sprint or whatever. And even when you watch, obviously I'm partial to the American stuff because I like to see my name poking around up in there. But when I watch, you know, the live streams and stuff, or when I was actually over there watching it, when you have the super fast cars running together, we could talk about the super fast cars, but the super fast cars aren't on the same time for a lot logistical reasons as the club sprint guys. But it's not like you pull the cord on the club sprint guys like, all right, cool, we'll be back with a brief, you know, whatever. There's a lot of people with their families, with their friends, you know, talking about it and stuff that really make up the meat and potatoes of those events. And a lot of those are those, you know, those little guys that are trying to find that fame and have a good time. And I think Time Attack is like a great avenue for that when you have all those tiers, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Well, and another interesting aspect of time attack, because it's for time and not for position, not to be the first car to cross the checkered flag or to get the checkered flag, it opens the door for a little bit more camaraderie for everybody in the class, or at least it doesn't put a lot of stress in competitive stress on all of the competitors against each other, because ultimately you're competing for your best time versus trying to beat this guy and that guy and that guy. So I imagine that it's like part of it too is like it's just it fosters a little bit more of a camaraderie versus a competition in the pits and on the track.
Well, and your main competition is always going to be yourself. You know, when you're going for time, it's you and your car. That's pretty much the only competition you have, is to try and go as fast as you and your car can go. If you happen to beat the other guys in the class, great, but they're not your competition really. It's about you putting what is that, the one perfect lap. I mean, that is the slogan, right? Is it's what it really comes down to, is you taming your beast for one perfect lap.
This is true. And I do notice and enjoy seeing the camaraderie, people helping each other out, multiple teams getting together, during an off period time, or maybe like in between Saturday and Sunday or Friday and Saturday, and just tearing into a car to put it, to fix it and put it back together. It's always great to see.
Interesting you bring that up. When we went over to Japan, and I think this was just a cultural thing, I remember asking one of the teams, we're with Mark Berry's GTR, can we borrow that? No. I'm like, wow, okay. So they basically just shut us down. When they come here, it was like, whatever you need. Everyone opens their shops, but I think part of it's just culture and also the language barrier. They probably didn't know what we wanted, but what the Australians, the Australian tuner industry is so behind what I do. Everyone just says, you need a dyno, Haltech will open their dyno. It's got a motor on it. We don't care. Just come and use our dyno. Come and so everyone over here has been so behind what we're doing that it has become a community like that. Not only with the competitors, but also with the industry. Whatever you need, the people just open their shops and they'll stay there all night with you. And Hypertune. But you can ask Cole. He took the car there and he just worked around the clock on it. And they just helped him and whatever. It's all. Yeah. Because I guess in the longer term, everyone sees that we're doing this for the whole industry as a whole, so it helps everyone. It
kind of gives me the vibe of like action sports, like watching a bunch of skateboarders like throw down for like some big X Games event or a mountain, some type of event, and like even though they're trying to win the gold or get first place, but like they're still rooting each other on for like Ryan to do some crazy trick he's never done before. And when he does it, it's like everybody's fucking stoked for him, So I get that same vibe from it too, which I think is really cool. But don't get me wrong, and I know Ian sees it too. Like you do get guys that butt heads and talk shit and
sure.
Well, the hardest thing we've got now, particularly trying to promote, particularly everyone wants to see what's going on at the upper level. It's like dealing with an F1 team. You're not allowed to see anything. Oh. You can't film any of that aero. You can't see any of that. We can't show you they put a cover over everything. So it's got that level of competition now that you can't. Even the aerodynamics are saying, don't let anyone see those drawings. So it gets harder and harder to promote because everyone's so hungry for information. What are they doing this year? Well, I can't show you. I'm not allowed to show you.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to show up. Work in their garage, but they don't want anybody to know what they're doing.
Yeah,
so
racing for tube stations, we call it in Australia.
Yes. Man. Well, and Ian, what do you think it is? Australia, I think, has a unique climate for motorsports. I mean, the best example I can give you of that is Australia has its own YouTube channel for motorsports. There's Australia. Yeah, so like you can go in and you can watch V8 supercars and they actually put up races from all over the place.
Oh yeah,
And I don't know, and I think that you guys a lot of even lower level mid-tier races are on your just regular television. Whereas like over here in the States, just a lot of like the more grassroots motorsports has gotten lost in the shuffle, it seems.
So yes and no. They have a show on Sunday called Speed Week, which is on SBS, which is traditionally the multicultural channel. But they have and the same guys that film our stuff film most of the stuff for that show. But outside of that, TCR's come to Australia now, but that's primarily a competitor-based event. They've got a well-funded organisation behind them that are running it, and they're brought in a single-seater category called S5000 now, and that's sort of trying to take on. But V8 supercars is really, there's V8 supercars, and then down from that, everything's sort of amateur level. But I mean, I'm even talking. They want us to do some demonstration with the stuff with them, and they refer to us as grassroots, which we are. But I said to them, you need to have a look at the top level of these cars. They're like two V8 supercars in value, and the people on them are all at the same level or possibly higher than a lot of the teams there. Even though they don't have the big sponsors. So there is that divide, I guess. But it's I guess you call it evolution. That where we are today is this is just 10 years of 12 years now of year by year growing into something bigger.
Sure. Well, and Jason and Kit, do you think that here in the States, even though kind of like the network presence of motorsports maybe is not exactly what it once was, that kind of the internet era and social media era that's where a lot of this content has now come to, and is kind of, if you know where to look, that you can actually go and still see all the stuff that you might want to see. And I guess, like Ian, you broadcast all of World Time Attack on the internet as well. But I'm wondering, like Jason and Kit, has that really been something that's helped kind of get more exposure for everything that you guys are doing?
Yeah, it helps tremendously. It's pricey to do a live stream production. We only do it on like our major events. So obviously Super Lap Battle Code is live streamed. Road Atlanta we live stream. And then for sure always Button Willow in November we live stream. I'd like to do more, but like I said, it gets pretty pricey.
It is very expensive to do it.
Yeah, and to do it right, you know, the one we do at COTA that Kit knows, I mean, it's crazy expensive, but to do it halfway correctly, at least, you've got to spend money. Things cost money.
Correct.
But long story short, it gets us in front of way more eyeballs than are able to show up to the event. You know, there's a lot of fans out there that want to watch and pay attention to what's going on, but they're not able to make it.
The other thing I'll say about that, Jace, is that like I won't lie to you, our live stream production's $100,000, right?
Yeah.
Trying to sell that though to $100,000, advertisers don't see they to date, and I think it's slowly changing, but to date, to try and sell that for that value, advertisers don't see the value in a live stream. You know, we don't even get half that value back, and then we've got to sell ads and little pieces to try and make it up, and everyone expects it for free, which is that's the internet, you know. So pay-per-view channel is a very big challenge to try and make work, and you'll get a fraction of your eyeballs on it then. So it's a very, very delicate balancing act, that's for sure.
It is. It's really more so done for us, which I think you'll probably agree. It's more so done for the fans and just to get the reach out there. It's not so much done where it's like we're not doing it because it's generating money.
We've lost money every year, guaranteed.
Yeah, it's costing money to do it. The only way that we're making money is if there's people showing up and buying tickets to actually see it in person.
And then the downside of that, Jace, we've had people go, mate, our live stream's that good, I'm just going to stay at home and watch it. They live 5 kilometres from the track.
You can't fucking win, dude. You just can't fucking win.
You can't win, you know. But, you know, when I spoke to Jim at Formula Drift about that, they had the same problem, you know. Right back in the day. So
Right.
Hopefully that there's still, it's going to get exposed to some people, and there's going to get some new interest to actually get people out to the track, and then hopefully it just inspires people to build something in their garage and take it to the track.
Well, one of the things we've also learned is that you got to make that live experience at the track something that they can't get on the live stream, you know. That they still want to come, so there's still enough there that, you know, you need to be there if you can.
Pit walks, you know, vendor conversations, the Miss World Time Attack.
We can't do that anymore. You know? We're not allowed to do Miss World Time Attack anymore.
Really? No more?
No, well, because we've got the government involved now. We've got
ticket to Australia.
I know, right? And, you know, look, in fairness to them, they've got rules and so on with government departments. They can't. But the girls actually loved it. The crowd loved it. And we always kept it very clean. It was not something. So we had a lot of, we had a little bit of, I'll tell you a funny story about that. We were at an awards night one night about that. And the lady that we're dealing with from the New South Wales government said, oh, you can't be doing Miss Time Attack anymore. You know, it's against our criteria. You know, I went, really? Okay. I said, is it the girl? She said, no, you can't be, what do they call it? Sensationalizing women on the stage. And the marketing girl from Yokohama said, we love it. That's part of our sponsorship agreement. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think because they're the government, you have to appease a larger scale of people. And, you know, we respect that. So I've had to pull a pin on it. And but we still have grid girls, and we still have a lot of other stuff that make it, we call it rock and roll. You know, that's what makes it rock and roll. And you know, at the end of the day, we've got to keep it a family show. So we can't be doing crazy stuff. But, you know, the Umbrella Girls and all that are a big part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I know I can say that Kit and Brian will agree because we've all been to World Time Attack Challenge. I mean, Ian does a fucking rad job at just putting on an awesome event like while you're there. And that's why when we went the first time in 2019, Ian, and then we talked after that about putting together a tour to get more people to come, which is why Ryan came the next year, or whatever it was, 18, 19, I forget. COVID's kind of messed up my memory. But, and brought over 20 people from the States, because I wanted them, Kit and I wanted these people to see that event, the way that you do it, and just the whole thing. You know what I mean?
So, I'll tell you,
good,
that goes right back to when we first started doing this, everyone said to me, you will never get people to come and watch that. It's not a spectator event. Which, if you go back far enough, it probably isn't. If you just, if all the cars are just, really ratty looking things, and I've been really, really particular about people's presentation and getting people to wear uniforms and the whole fan experience, and if I see someone putting a sticker, I remember the first year we did World Time Attack, and the guy just slapped the sticker on. I said, what the fuck are you doing, man? You can't. I pulled it off and said, put it on square, because this is the detail we have to have, and the whole fan experience has to be. So we put a lot of effort into, fuck yeah, we're taking the plane off on the straight, man, in front of everyone.
That was right.
Fuck yeah, we're bringing Dago's Lamborghini out here. All that stuff, because that's rock and roll. And we've had to put a lot more effort into now to get 25,000 people there. They know that Baker's going to put on a fucking show. It's not just going to be. Right. Well, I think a lot of other motorsports, in general, have got lazy in doing that. They've just basically said everyone's going to come anyway, and then when you get there, it's another $20 to get in here, another $10 to get in there, and you're not allowed to look at this. You can't. Where we've said, mate, you pay one ticket price apart from VIP, you can get it everywhere. And I've resisted the urge to ever change that, because a lot of our fans don't have lots of money, and they all want to come there. So we've always, put a lot of effort into doing that.
Well, and making an event accessible, it's like being able to walk the pits and see the cars, get within reason close to the cars and see the techs, and hopefully some of the crews are conducive to that, and we'll talk to people. I mean, that's from a spectator standpoint, that's a phenomenal experience. If you're a car person, the way that you're a car person is if you're at the race and there's the race is about to go on over there, but you're in the pits because you're having this conversation with one of the mechanics, and you're getting some perspective. That is the best thing ever.
The other thing,
I'm telling you, anybody listening, if you've got a chance to go to his event, I don't work for him, but I really recommend going.
Thank you.
I'm fucking kidding, man. It's totally worth it. It's
the other thing is, the really funny one was Tsuchiya when he come here, and I said, I knew he would, Australia's had such a Japanese JDM car culture forever. We had WRXs here in 1999, and GDRs raced in Australia, and so the whole thing. So when I first brought him here, I said, it melted the internet when he said he was coming, and then when he got here, people just fucking turn up. They had a glove box off an old Corolla they wanted to sign. So we had to put security around him. He's like, this is crazy. So I went, you know what, the following year, I'm not paying for security. So we got promo girls to do the security. Right? So that just adds to the rock and roll. So he's like a rock star now. And these girls go, excuse me, please. So that's all part of the show that kind of our audience gets it, so can I get a photo with Tsuchiya? Yeah, and 3 girls standing around, so it's pretty cool.
So let's just explain. This is Kiichi Tsuchiya, who he raced Super GT. He's one of the future driver of Best Motoring. He's just a renowned figure.
If you go right back, he sort of invented drifting, per se.
Yep.
And then he raced for Toyota in the GT1, come second at Le Mans,
Yep.
Raced Super GT for years in the Arta NSX, and now he's the manager of Super GT. But the big thing with that guy is, he's a car enthusiast, and he said to me the first year we were there and he drove that Pagani, he goes, man, this is the best event I've ever been to. And I went, really? Are you fucking kidding me? You raced at Le Mans. He goes, no, that's really serious, and people yelling in my ear to save the tires and fuel. This is just fun.
Right.
So he's the thing about him, he's a real car enthusiast, and I still, every time I go to Japan, we go and hang out and have dinner and beers and whatever, and he's a cool guy.
Very cool.
Yeah, my picture with them.
Same as Tarzan as well. He's a rock, same thing. He was here from day one, and he loves coming back every year. Ian-san, find me something to drive, Ian-san, So it's cool.
That's how you know you're onto something right there.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, I mean, it sounds like Ian, you put together a world-class event by inviting world-class cars, and just like they came, then all of a sudden they're there, and now it is a world-class event because you've had all these cars, and that has become like they've set the times to beat, they've set the standards, and just everybody has had to elevate their game once.
I think so. They all love being there. All the drivers are different. Like Shane Van Gisberger now, who's the he's the number one driver in Australia. He drove the MCA Hammerhead. He wants to come and go drifting now because he loves it, So he drives the MCA drift car. And he said, "No, I don't. It's too fast for me now." But he said, "But I won't drive an Indy car. I drive an Indy car on a road circuit, but I wouldn't drive on one of those ovals." So, but they all love coming here and being a part of it. Tim Slade, Luffy, Warren Laugh, a lot of the V8 guys. This is a fun weekend for them too.
Sure. Well, and Ken, Jason, what do you think? Is that inspiring what you guys do? Are you hoping that some people in the States will see what's going on at World Time Attack, and kind of like we've talked about Cole Pallison at Life Motorsports, and he took his GTR over there. He's still kind of one of the cars that's like up there. I think Will Young's car is also like another one that's like here in North America. He's from Canada, so we can't entirely claim him, but he's participating in a lot of these events, and so
I'll never make that mistake again either. By the way, it's like calling me a New Zealander.
Yes. But it seems like the States is starting to get more people that are really keyed into Time Attack and what it's all about, and like Kate, you said that the builds maybe are a little bit like not as developed as some of the Australian cars, but we're making progress, it seems.
Yeah. So one of the things that JD and I both noticed when we first announced the first Super Lap battle until now is that there's so many cars being built in sheds that we have never heard about, never seen, and now a lot of them are just coming out of the woodworks, right? And I think one of the things that we used to talk about all the time is we used to be the guys that flipped through the magazines at the liquor store 20 years ago, right? That's how we got our attention into imports and building cars and drag racing and street racing and all that. And what happened is, like, for a good amount of time, there was a disconnect in this technology, right? And the magazines kind of fell off, and the internet speed wasn't fast enough to reach the audience that we're trying to reach today. But now with that internet speed, like we were talking about live stream and whether it's worth it or not and all that, it's starting to become worth it because now we're reaching those eyes that we were struggling to reach for many years.
That's a big thing, what you said then, that the internet and also the capability out here. The first year we did live stream, we had a huge amount of dropouts because there just wasn't the bandwidth to deal with it. Now they've got cabling out there, they've got fiber optic to track, and so all that stuff is a big, and you guys will be seeing the same thing over there, the past 5 years, a huge improvement in that.
Yeah. And I think this is like our approach, Ian's approach, our approach here. It's not just for Time Attack, right? It's actually for the entire industry. Because I've been a part of this industry all my life, and I've watched the industry hit its peak where my shop was, bringing in lots of money, lots of cars, 15, 16 appointments a day to like 5 appointments a day. Yeah. And it's due to technology because we weren't able to reach those kids that are now young adults today.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And so now our efforts today it's going to reach the kids today for the next generation, basically. And hopefully the shops will be busier again. And hopefully like all the parts companies will sell parts again, lots of parts.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. I think ultimately is try to save this industry, because the import industry is like, it's a part of our life. And I don't think that any of us want to see it go away.
No.
One of the other interesting things, last year, I don't know if you saw, but the last time you guys were out here, we had Hyundai involved, whatever you say. And they built a van, right, with a V6 twin turbo in it, just to race in the club sprint class,
Oh, wow.
And everyone's going, why the hell did they do that? You know why? make the brand cool.
Yeah.
So they had a big display, and he said to us, you know, the marketing manager guy said, "Man, we got so much value out of that compared to like." So we always think now, what can we do without, you know, can we help other? I don't really want manufacturers building a pro class car, because if that happens, it'll be like Volkswagen. No one will catch them. You know, they'll come in and go. They'll come in and spend $7 million to beat everyone by 5 seconds, and then go and park in a museum somewhere.
Right.
Right. And everyone else will go, "There's no point now. We can't beat the record." So we're very conscious of that as well. But
that
to get them in at the lower
here
level,
with drag racing with GM back in the early 2000s with GM building building a front wheel drive drag car, and just spent all kinds of tons of money on it, and just smoked everybody.
That's what'll happen. So, but Hyundai will come back again, you know, at the lower level, and they'll build like a tuner level car, because that's where their market is, you know. And I'll say that I can tell you guys, we've got Gazoo Racing involved this year, you know.
Oh shit!
Wow.
Toyota in Australia, so awesome. They're going to be there in a fairly large capacity, you know. But this is their market, you know. That's This is the guys they're selling to. So, you know, they'll have a big display. They're going to, you know, we're doing a deal so they can bring a lot of their clients there and have a, you know, if you bought a Yaris GR or a Super GR, they can, you know, they park them all up and give them lunch, whatever they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking out of school, but they're going to be involved, you know. Nice. And I think, you know, 10 years ago, none of those companies wanted to be involved in anything, you know, because it was sort of a bit taboo. But now you're seeing that, you know, Toyota's made Gazoo Racing to do this type of stuff, you know, cool. To get the tuner level involved. And, well, you know, Toshi over there, he did a lot of the releases with that Super, and he said they made so many things on that car's got mounts for oil coolers built into it, so you can modify it, you know. So a lot of that stuff, but again, they've got to be a bit careful that people don't just go and blow stuff up and want warranty. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
It's tricky.
I think you're going to see, you know, these car companies are trying to get back involved in stuff. Some of them are anyway. Hyundai and Toyota definitely. You know?
The old adage was, you know, win on Sunday, sell on Monday, or race on Sunday, sell on Monday.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, you know, trying to, you know, inspire people to go down and buy the car that they see as winning. But like what we know now, that's changed, and it's buy the car that has the potential to do what you want to do with it.
Right.
And that's I mean, I would kind of say that's kind of the core of what Time Attack is you take a car that's just a car, but you can repurpose it and turn it into a race car to compete at whatever the tier you want it to do. And so the companies that have a car that gives you the most ability or the easiest or the best ability to form it into the class of a car that you want to race it, all of a sudden that's hugely appealing.
Sure.
If the manufacturers are going to help facilitate that, like Toyota TRD or Gazoo Racing, some of the U.S. manufacturers have done that in the past, where they have like performance packages that like they're going to do all the engineering for you. You just need all of this stuff, and it's going to get you to, you know, this performance level. That's hugely appealing to somebody coming in.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, and wasn't Jackie Ding even working with Toyota a couple of years ago to try and get the traction control and the ABS and all that stuff sorted with the Supra?
I heard something about that. I
don't know how official it was, but
right.
I mean, that dude's just like a dude like me or like Scotty, you know. I mean, it's crazy to think that like companies, there might even be a rumor out there that like Toyota or a company like Toyota would even be partnering with the information collected from a Time Attack, you know.
Well, look, I mean, you've only got to look. They're involved in Formula Drift, both Ford and Toyota, you know. They sponsor Osbo's car. I think they're involved as a semi-works team. It appears that way. I'm speaking out of school, but that's what it looks like to me. Them and a couple of others. So I think the president of Toyota now is a car nut, and that's part of that whole Gazoo Racing thing. Is, you know, that's why they've made that side arm, which is basically what the TRD used to be, I think. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
But with a little bit more of a 100% racing direction.
Like and they're building world cars for the world market, like the GR Yaris. They sold out of that here, you know.
Sure.
We never got that here.
We didn't get that.
It's a weapon, man. It's a 3-cylinder turbo with a carbon fiber roof and all-wheel drive. Like real little rally
Yeah.
rocket, you know.
Yeah.
I think I ran a 12-second quarter out of the box, you know.
Holy shit.
Man.
So we were actually a bit worried that we had to. I said, as soon as we open club sprint class, we're going to have 47 Yaris's entering, you know.
Yeah.
So we had to select the fastest ones. That was the trick, you know, and just
Yeah.
say, sorry, man, everyone else misses out. We don't have room, you know.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it's interesting because if some shops start to really think about time attack as like this is the way to kind of like show what your car's capable of. Some manufacturers see that time attack is the way to really show what this car measures up to. In some ways, that is the core spirit of what time attack is. Because like going back to Japan, the origin of time attack, to the best of my understanding, and
Yep.
correct me here if need, was basically for the tuning shops to go out and build a car and show who could build the fastest car. Like that's
100% right. And then what happened over from the mid 2005 to 2010, they all went mental. The CT230R, and they build, you know, like crazy. Well, by today's standards, they'd be like our open class cars. The aerodynamics were not there, but they were sort of like crazy builds, you know, lightweights, and then slowly evolved back to street class cars because that's what the shops were selling. So
right.
Yeah.
there's no point making a one-off carbon fiber front for a GDR when no one's going to buy it, you know.
Right.
Right.
So we've seen a lot of those tuning shops go back to a street class car. However, they were still using professional drivers. Taniguchi and Tarzan, all those guys were still there driving it, which we've been very careful not to do that, because what happens out here, all the guys want to drive it themselves and they can never beat those guys.
Right.
Yeah.
So in club sprint class, you can't have professional drivers.
Yeah, we've got
right
to
up
think
to-
like that too.
About as professional as you can get is Brett. You know, and you even get people complain about that because he does driver training and so on. But at the end of the day, you know, we say he's not a professional driver. So, you know, but we wouldn't let someone like, you know, Shane Van Gisbergen in there, for instance, you know, because he is a professional driver.
Right.
Well, so I'm wondering so we talked about technology and like talking about like the guys that have gotten inspired by time attack and they're working on a car that's in their shed and is unknown until they roll it out and show up at an event. I think part of that is the technology that has just kind of come about in the last 10 years. Like just like the level of engineering of parts that are available from the aftermarket now makes a lot of that possible. You know, like 20 years ago, you'd have to be a professional race team to build some of the stuff that you could do in your garage and buy parts off of just a standard part shop online. So the technology has really come up. So, I mean, I'm going to make the argument that probably at this point, like power is the most attainable, attainable part of a build compared to anything else. What do you think is the hardest aspect or is the new kind of threshold that everybody's trying to exploit to build the car to make it to set
I can
that
tell
new
you
record?
unequivocally, how do we say unequivocally, is aerodynamics.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
By a mile.
Yeah.
A mile. So for every dollar you spent on horsepower, you'll get 5 in aerodynamics.
$5 spent in aerodynamics.
Yeah, it's such a big advantage, you know, like to give you an example of that, right back to day one, when Sierra had, you know, a super well sort of powerful car, very minimal aerodynamics, a 900 horsepower, Cosworth engine program, blah, 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 pro driver. Cyber Evo had a dentist building a car in Japan, right? with no data whatsoever. But superior aerodynamics and lightweight, and Sierra could not beat them.
Wow.
And that went for 2 years, and then they built that car called Nemo, which was built around aerodynamics. So the whole thing was, and that was a game changer. The whole thing was built around aerodynamics. Andrew Brilliant designed it, and it only had 450 horsepower or something, and it did a 125 when everyone else was doing 127.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was and then we had to look at the rules, and because we virtually had no rules, and that brought in a rule set that, you know, this is everyone else is going to walk away if we don't sort this out. These days, we'd be very careful about changing too much because there's a big investment in what we got.
Yeah.
And when people say, "Oh, you change the rules all the time," no, we don't. We only change things so it makes it more readable and interpretable, and the safety aspects. As cars are going faster, you got to remember now. We're doing A1 GP speeds, which is 4 seconds quicker than the Formula 3 record.
Wow.
So we have to attain the safety level stuff. But yeah, in answer to your question, aerodynamics by a mile.
Is that, Kiet and Jason, are you seeing the same thing here in the States?
Exactly.
Totally, 100%.
Like Ian said, once Nemo came out to play, it completely changed the game.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Well,
and is that
so? You have people like Ferris Khartoumi. He just put out that the picture of his new front wing, and it's a wing. It's not even a splitter now, but he needs more front downforce. So I mean, you look at that, and it's like it's the direction everybody's going. I think Cole Palsom told me at one point that he said, "You got these people that will design 6,000 pounds of downforce. It's your responsibility to figure out how to make power to push through that drag, to use all that downforce." And I mean, it is such a crazy game to see the aero.
The next problem you got too, well, not a problem, but it's you can design all your own aero and get it to work until the next bloke's using an F1 designer to design the aero, and then you're not going to beat him unless you've got that level of not only downforce but they work out how to make it downforce without drag. So and that becomes you need someone with those smarts and that level of computing power to design the stuff, and then the manufacture.
Right.
Well, and two, it's, I mean, how much of a limit? So there's you have these guys that are designing a lot of aero packages like Andrew Brilliant and whatnot that can make just like 6,000 pounds of downforce. Is it becoming? I've started to see like where using a factory chassis is becoming a limitation. And I don't know all the details, but I was following along with Andy Forrest's build of his Impreza, and he got to the point where he was making so much downforce that he was bending the suspension up front, so he went to a cantilever suspension because with a McPherson front strut, it just couldn't stand up to the downforce, and he had to change away from that. And
actually, it's not. You're partly right there.
Okay.
That was done so that they can use the third spring. Which is what keeps. So the way that works, it keeps the car off the ground. If you just use conventional suspension and you give it, 5,000 pounds of downforce, the faster you go, the more it goes bang down, and you'll be hitting the splitter on the ground. This actually keeps the car off the ground.
So this is incorporating heave spring.
Correct. Your heave spring. That's correct. So you'll see any of the LMP cars, anything with high downforce uses that style of suspension. We encourage it because in the interest of safety. As if they're not using that, they're using a conventional. You want to have your game really well and truly. So I know that Tilton doesn't use it, but they've got 10 years of experience of not using it, and a whole bunch of guys that know their way around it. And one of the things that I'll tell you is why we'd never use movable aero in the interest of safety, because if I got Sammy from the F1 team, got a guy writing software for that movable aero, I'm okay with it. The trouble is though, you've got to have the same rule for anyone. So when some bloke gets movable aero working in his back shed, that could be very dangerous. If you know what I mean. It's sort of, particularly when you're talking about big objects moving.
Yeah.
And again, it is time attack. We go back. That's a sport for everyone. So we have to have the same rules for everyone. We can't have, if you've got an F1 designer, you're allowed to move the aero. If you don't, you can't,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, how fast is the RP968 taking turn one at Sydney Motorsports Park at full check?
Noise. It doesn't lift. No, 260 kilometers an hour. No backing off.
My gosh.
Full check.
But again, that's they're a pro race team. It's a pro build. It's got a full billet dry sump engine, even the head's built. So everything's built to do that. And Barton Moore weighs about, 45 kilograms. He's been driving that circuit since he was 10 years old. So, it's all, you can see how it all works.
Yeah.
So it sounds like aero, like figuring out aero or having people that can make like truly well-designed functional aero. I mean, that's maybe the next kind of threshold to really see like well-developed cars come along and really start to see times drop again?
I mean, even when
Yeah,
we did that podcast,
Andy's Subaru, he built himself, but Andrew designed all that stuff. So yeah, I guess it's like anything, you know, you can build your motor in the back shed, but is it really going to beat Cosworth? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Or something of
It's
that
a
caliber.
challenge.
And it goes like that right through for everything, you know. So you can beat people with homemade aero if you're using a homemade aero. But if other people are using professionally designed CFD design stuff, if you're not using that, you're going to be at a big disadvantage.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's
One
one
of
of
the-
those things. That's like witchcraft still. Like what works
Yeah,
and what doesn't.
absolutely.
Like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to figure
Yeah,
out.
I mean, I think they're even Alison was even talking about how if they would have started over again with the Skyline, they would have changed everything about the aero package and then used that as its number one priority, because it's definitely one of these roads that you can go down where people start with the easy things, the power, the coilovers, and they're doing the
All of that
brakes
stuff,
and they're doing this and then the bolt-on aero. And then when you get to a point where you really want to like change, you know, get that serious about the aero of a car, it's like starting all over again. You know,
Yeah,
look at
absolutely.
under Suzuki's car. I mean, that thing is like barely a 240 anymore. You know, I mean, it's just crazy to see. You have to have that consideration.
You know,
up
I'll give you an
front, too.
example too, that you've got to be right on your game with that. Once you got that level of, he caused that crash himself. That was
Yeah.
not the tyres. There was nothing else. It was him, because he went out there on display tyres in order to save his good tyres for the proper practice session.
Oh man.
Well, when it's at that level, you can't use if you miss one thing, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he destroyed the car, wrote the car off, ended up in hospital. We got him out that day. He was fine. Once again, because we're insisting on all the top safety gear, he hit the wall at 260 kilometres an hour because the tyre failed, because it was one of his transport tyres that was 2 years old.
Oh man.
So you can't, it doesn't matter. Forget the brand of tyre, forget what it is. You can't, every detail has to be, you know, dotted, every T cross at that level, everything has to come up with it. Now, a professional team wouldn't do that.
Right.
But he's not a professional team. So these are things that we've got to think about in terms of our safety, and we're getting more involved with safety scrutineers now, making sure that all that stuff doesn't happen anymore, you know?
Sure.
Mhm.
That's a massive challenge for you guys as organizers. for sure.
Absolutely. And it comes with a huge cost, but you got to do it, you know? So we've got to have people making sure that all these I's are dotted and T's crossed. Every major crash, even in our drift, every major crash we've had there has been in practice. You know, because everyone lets their guard down, you know, goes, oh, it's all right, we're just practicing, you know?
Yeah.
Well, so let's see. We've been going for a little bit, so we're kind of winding it towards the end here. I wanted to ask you guys too. The other question I want to ask is, Kiet, you'd mentioned there's some cars that are now coming out of sheds that you had no idea about that are now seeing the light of day. What, for any of you guys, what are some of these new cars that are coming out that you're excited about seeing what they have to do?
Well, we just want to see them out there.
Yeah.
We just want to see them out there and see what they can do, and then obviously progress from being out there, you know, because a lot of times people build crazy cars and then they never really compete at a time attack event with it. They take it out there expecting to go super fast, and they're not, you know. But what happens is that they'll go to these events, they'll run these events, and then they'll see the other competitors, learn off of them, and then they'll come back a lot faster.
Yeah. I'm going to leak a sneaky one. I can't tell you too much about it, but there's one being built in Australia right now. It's a chrome bumper car, like an early 70s.
Okay.
They're putting a ex-Nismo V8 race engine in it that's been stroked out to 6.5 litres or something, with nitrous, makes 1,100 horsepower, sequential Hollinger, Andrew B. and aero, pro driver in the open class.
Really?
and chrome bumpers?
It's a chrome bumper car.
Chrome bumper car.
It's
Oh
an
my
early
God.
70s car.
That's going to be
Wow.
I
awesome.
hope it's Nel Camino.
No, well, they're putting a Nismo engine in it, so you can you can have a think about that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's a Nissan engine, so
It's a 70s GDR.
yeah, with nitrous oxide and all the gear. So anyway, there's
gonna
a
be
few
crazy.
other really good ones too. So
That's awesome.
Do you think that there could be a point in the future where there's like you have World Time Attack, which is kind of garnered some world attention.
Yep.
Europe, we haven't really talked about Europe, but they have a Time Attack series going as well.
Yep.
And then we've got some, Time Attack going here in the States. Do you think
where is crazy for it?
where?
Scandinavia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Sweden,
Yeah.
Norway, what's his name in Gustav in
Yes.
Sweden. Have you seen what he's
Fine.
done to that
Yeah.
Porsche now? He wants to come
Yeah.
back out. He's put a Albans transaxle, a full billet K24 engine,
Right.
and
Right.
he
Oh,
wants
man.
to come back out. So and also Sammy in the Audi.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Finland.
Yeah.
It's really. I mean, I think that goes back to. Remember, they had that show up there called what was it called? And it was like a crazy. Anyone that ever went there said you got to go and see it. It was like a drifting. Time attack. Yeah,
I've heard of it. I just can't think of it.
Yeah. Anyone that went to
Yeah.
anyway, that it'll come to me in a minute.
Yeah.
It's like a crazy festival, and it's just
Festival,
freaking bonkers.
yeah. So I think that's inspired a lot of it up there. Andrew said he gets a fair bit of work up there as well. So, I think, Europe to me seems very hill climb orientated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a huge
Because
hill climb section.
that's their, that European Hill Climb Championship's like huge, and it's been going for
Mhm.
100 years,
Yeah.
And I mean that I think there's some similarity in some mindset from a hill climb to a time attack.
Sure.
I mean, maybe some differences in the build, but I mean they're not that dissimilar.
No,
Even
100%.
Even the driving mentality, I think, and that's one of the things I really challenge a lot of my drivers locally to work on is the hill climb. You get like one shot, and you don't get like warm up laps, and then you go and do it. Usually, it's like, all right, it's like green flag. You're either going to do it now or you're not. And
they're crazy using like Judd old F1 engines and all sorts of stuff,
yeah. And so it's a time attack's kind of like that too. I mean, if you're on the such to the pointy end of the stick where the driving conditions they matter. Is this the time? Like you have this tiny window, and I mean, you see it with World Time Attack. You get one run on a set of new tires, like on the pointy end of the stick, like. You don't get like that chance to like it's always going to be what could have been, and hill climb is very much, I mean, it's definitely like that, right?
Yeah.
And aero matters, and especially if you're going up where there's elevation, like aero is just such a big part of it.
Well, once again, I'll go back that if you go over to Europe, how many retired F1 engineers are going to be over in Europe?
Yep.
So there'll be a dime a dozen. So they'll go up and go, I know how to make this car go faster,
Yeah.
Well, so what I was getting at is, do you think there could be a point where there's cars that move around that go from Europe to Australia to the States and then back? Do you think we're starting to get to the point?
Well, let's hope.
I'm 100% the desire's there to do that.
Yeah.
It's the cost involved with doing it. And particularly now, until the shipping settles down, you could not even to bring a car to Australia now. It costs you $50,000.
Right.
It's just it's crazy because the shipping is all over the place now. So we say in April there's no way there's not going to be any overseas cars here, which we've just accepted that fact because it's just the cost is through the roof. But that will stabilise. That's all to do with the pandemic and containers stuck in China. And as that eases over the next, by 2020, 2022, 2023, I should say, that should be, or even late 2022, that will stay. The shipping rates will come back. Supply and demand, everyone wants, and because everything's in this pandemic, everyone's buying everything online, right? So there's stuff being shipped from cars. You try and buy anything, you can't get it. So the shipping lines are just off the planet. So to try and do time critical shipping, which is what we do, it would just be, way too expensive.
Yeah.
But in answer to your question, I think the desire's there. I think part of that thing is if we can both show how how we can help their sponsors help them to make it happen, that will be a big way towards, I know William's got some support from Vibrant. They're always keen to help him move stuff around and so on. I think once we can get over that with support from corporate level at competitors, that will be a big way towards, particularly if a car is sponsored by so-and-so and they see a big market in America for their thing, to bring their car from Europe to your event makes sense,
Right.
Otherwise, the competitor's doing it on his own, which will be very expensive.
Yeah. I think we just have to.
Definitely the goal, it's something that, we've, between like Kit and Ian and myself, we've kicked around and talked about that, it would be great in the future if we could encourage more of that to happen. Yeah. Obviously, Ian's already been doing it for years, obviously, with competitors around the world, even from here in the States. But, we'd like to get more coming this way. But yeah, COVID happened, and it really just kind of halted the brakes on everything, especially shipping cars around the world. And Ian's spot on. I mean, until the prices stabilize,
it's just not realistic.
We have to wait till that happens, But
and I think everyone sort of
people still want to do it, And I'm even currently talking to like probably 3 or 4 different teams based in Europe that aren't even the 2 that he's talking about that want to come to the United States, because it's pretty easy to come just right over the Atlantic. But at the same time, the prices right now are so out of control. But these things do take time. So even just having the conversations are nice.
And we've got to keep the candle lit. That's the next thing. We can't just stop doing what we're doing because of the shipping. So if we keep the candle lit and just consolidate for the next year or two, year or so, I'd like to say, by the end of next year, you'd want to hope and pray that this is on its way out and we're getting back to some sort of normality, Yeah.
And we've even looked at it like it's probably even cheaper to build a car in Australia and leave it there.
Yeah.
Than to ship one there.
Well, if you're going to build a car anyway, that would certainly be the case.
Yeah.
Just in general, huh? I mean, all the companies are there. Hollander,
Exactly.
Haltech.
And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if you use that as a tool and then someone would probably buy it off you.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not out of the question either,
Well, and I think that like with the live streaming and the fans becoming more aware of everything that you guys are doing worldwide, I mean, it's like the spectators are just about to the point where they're ready for that to actually be able to. I mean, what would be so cool is to follow a car to an event on each of these continents.
Well, one thing you got to remember as well, one thing we think of as in the long term is that, 10 years ago when we started, our 18-year-old fan's 28 now.
Yeah.
He's probably in a different position financially to what he was then.
Right.
And if he's been following all the way along, and the big thing for us was to get a 5-year deal with the New South Wales government. So we're guaranteed we're running this event. And the big one is, of course, we're going to be doing it under lights as well.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
How much of a factor do you guys consider about the stories that the drivers and the teams bring with each car? Is that something that is part of what attracts people, and or could attract people?
Very much in our space. In our space, compared to like professional level motorsport, even they're trying to do that now. Yeah, it creates relativity. Yeah, and it gets the guy with a Honda sees William or Young, goes, you know what, I can do that. Yeah, he's just a normal guy,
Right.
Right. So I think
he's not a dentist.
It's very important.
Yeah.
It's
one of those unique aspects to time attack where, again, if you get it, you think some of these guys, it's a professional race team with bottomless pockets. Then you find out that it's actually not. It's a guy that's doing a lot of the work himself, and all of a sudden it makes it's an attainable option if you want to try and build a car to compete.
That's for sure.
And it makes these stories that everybody goes through, it makes it relatable, like what Ian's talking about, and to inspire others, we would hope, to want to get involved in some type of level. And the other thing that's neat about the sport too, and it's like this in other things as well, but it just brings together these different like people from different walks of life, where you've got a dentist now, that driver or a guy in a team that's talking to a guy that used to be a criminal, that is talking to a guy that's a school teacher. You know what I mean?
We try and avoid the criminal part.
Don't tell anybody.
But you know what I'm saying?
If they've got an ankle bracelet on, we want them to know why.
Yes.
Right.
Grand Theft Auto.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we've hit over our time mark, so I don't want to keep you guys here for too long, because for some of us, the sun has gone down, and I guess Ian, it's about lunchtime for you.
I'm going to go and get lunch. We're going to get.
Yes.
I'm going to go and get a meat pie. There you go.
Oh man,
Heck
that's
yeah.
just so weird.
Hey, so Ian, are you allowed to actually get up and go somewhere?
Oh, we're allowed within 5 kilometres of our home, but I'm allowed to go to my office anyway. So
Okay.
I've been going in there a day a week, but it's starting to drag on. Pretty boring out here, you know.
Yeah.
I bet, man. Fucking A.
Hopefully not too much longer. Like I said, hopefully like 6 to 12 months, and we'll be over this thing. And
Well, they're
be able
talking
to-
now that they're going to have to open everything up. They can't keep everything shut. You know, it's going to send. If they send the country broke, the health system will collapse. You know, so.
Right.
You know, we've got probably the same thing that you guys had over there. That's all the states fighting each other, you know, like
Yeah.
anyone that doesn't have any. So they're like Queensland has got 0 cases up there. So they just shut all the borders, you know.
Oh man.
So, and there's
Oh,
like
see,
the army.
that's what we never
There's
did
the military
here.
at the border.
Can't
you know,
go to
like-
Wyoming.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
never
well,
did that here with
yeah,
these
yeah.
states. Everybody's been able to travel, which has been part of the problem. So, like, if let's say there was no cases at one point in Oregon, but people had cases in, like, let's say Illinois, and they flew over there and they gave it to them, and then it just,
Yeah.
I've luckily, if I had it, I don't even know because I haven't gotten sick in 2 years. But
Yeah.
I mean, we've been able to, with wearing masks and different restrictions, still been able to hold a lot of the competitions around the country. I mean, I've been flying around for the
Wow.
past 2 years everywhere, within the United States.
Yeah, there's not airplanes here, man. There's nothing. It's
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it makes
anyway.
it
It's been
difficult.
great talking to you guys.
Yes, sir. Well, and I just want to ask
Sure.
Scotty and Dussex here just real quick. Do you guys have any questions that you guys want to ask? I've kind of asked.
Yeah, I kind of
Maybe.
wanted to beat Jason up with some of the pictures I've seen of him during his Vanilla Ice era. Where were you at in motorsports during the Vanilla Ice era? Was that import?
Oh,
Oh
boy.
man, with the dyed hair and shit.
Yeah, the frosted tips and the.
That was 1999. Is when
Hot
that
import
was.
nights.
1999.
I like how you know exactly what I'm talking about too. Like,
Yeah, I know what
you're
just
talking about.
queued up perfect.
For some of us, the 90s were a weird decade that we're kind of trying to disavow sometimes.
Yeah. All the raving
man.
turned my hair yellow. Yeah.
Well, Scotty, did you have any questions you wanted to ask?
No, I'm good. I thought this was a great talk with all you guys.
Yes.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
Thanks for having us on, eh?
Thanks for having us,
Yes,
guys.
sir.
Ian, it's nice to see you, man.
Yeah, stay safe over there.
Yeah,
Yes, you
thank
as
You do the
well.
same.
And,
Guys.
and fingers
See you in
crossed, and
April, yeah.
we'll be shipping cars and having a global time attack series here soon.
That'll happen eventually.
See you guys.
Yes. All right.
Later.
See you guys.
Later.